Paula Jo from Cedar Quilts. It's good to be back. I have some Quick Tip Tuesdays for you and I hope you watch them all. Our first Quick Tip Tuesday back is about loading your quilt, especially if you use a computer to do some of your quilting. Whether it's an edge to edge or especially if you're doing custom work, this is a very helpful thing. Instead of making a plumb line and making sure that the very top of the quilt is along that plumb line, I'm going to show you a better trick. Come here. Oftentimes borders are just a little bit wonky, or just the corners a little wonky and whatnot. So if we make that top edge perfectly parallel to the bars and the computer, the rest of the quilt might be off a little bit. So instead, this is the line that I usually try to make sure is as plumb and straight and perpendicular as possible. Right where the borders all stitch onto the body of the quilt, this is what I want to make straight. So I put my needle, my real needle on the real quilt, in the middle of the quilt here, right on that line, so you can see half the body of the fabric and half of the border inside that hopping foot. Then I turn on my channel lock, and whichever type of channel lock you have, you want the horizontal one. Some machines have a horizontal lock. Now, you might have clamps that fit on your carriage and whatnot. If you don't have a computer, you can still do channel locks for free motion. But if you're on a computer, we have these handy dandy little deals. You can either do a horizontal or there's a vertical one as well, but I use the horizontal way more than the vertical one. When you turn this on, you can't move your machine very far off that track. It's stuck there. You can go side to side nicely, but it won't allow you to go the other way. So you can lock in where you're stitching a nice straight line. Oh my goodness, it's just fabulous. Of course, if your quilt is loaded slightly kittywampus and you lock your channel so that you can only go straight, it's not going to line up with your quilt. And that's why it's so important to line up this inner line rather than the outside line of your quilt. And what that channel lock does, it keeps the gear of the carriage locked in place on your track. And so you can't move these wheels this way. It's locked in place there. If I turn the channel lock off, and depending on which type you have, maybe you have to remove your clamp and whatnot. But now I can move this way and this way. But if I turn that lock on and then you can move just a little bit and then it locks it in place. Now you can't do that. So anyway, those channel locks are fabulous. But this horizontal lock is on, and now you have to be careful. You don't want to try to move your machine too far off the track there. But with that horizontal lock on, now I move along and I keep adjusting the quilt so that I can see half the body and half the border in the hopping foot, and I just keep adjusting things until this line is pretty happy all the way across. And you can be as particular or as forgiving of this line as you want, but I really try to get as much of that entire line from corner to corner of the quilt nice and perpendicular to my plumb line all the way across. And then I oftentimes will even baste that line before I baste the outer edges. And then your design lines up with the body of the quilt and stays a lot straighter. Oh, it's so much easier. So anyway, if you sometimes are frustrated with lining everything up as perfectly as you possibly can and then you still have issues, yeah, come check out my videos and my classes and my tutorials, because I deal more in the reality of stitching out the real quilt rather than the perfection fantasy of planning. We need to do a little bit of both. But anyway, come on back and keep watching all my quilty stuff. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Toodaloo.